The Sterling name. It used to be a brand, a legacy, and for me, Ava Sterling, a constant, suffocating disappointment. My full name was a footnote in the grand history of Sterling and Associates, a rigid old-money law firm built by my father, Richard Sterling. My mother, Victoria, reigned supreme over society columns and charity galas. Their universe was meticulously ordered, and my role in it was perpetually undefined. They had their golden child, my brother Julian, destined for the predictable path. Law school, a suitable wife, and eventual partnership in the firm. I, the younger daughter, was merely decorative, or worse, an unpredictable variable, always questioning the outdated foundations of their world. I dared to choose a path outside their mahogany-paneled boardrooms. Architectural engineering. It was a field my father dismissed with a curled lip, calling it frivolous artistry, a trade for the nouveau riche. My meticulously calculated stress tests, elegant structural designs, and my thesis on earthquake-resistant composite materials were met with glazed eyes, while Julian's every simulated court victory was celebrated with vintage champagne and headlines in the social pages. Julian wasn't just the preferred child. He was the enforcer of mediocrity. He was the one who, with a single dismissive phrase, "Just another one of Ava's little projects that will never actually be built," could erase months of my intellectual labor from our parents' minds, reinforcing the idea that my work was merely a hobby. The ultimate measure of their indifference, the act that galvanized my decade of silent ambition, was my college graduation. This was the pinnacle. I was the salutatorian of my class at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and I was delivering the commencement address, a speech on the future of sustainable, self-optimizing urban design. It was a globally visible achievement, a moment that demanded their presence and acknowledged the intellectual rigor of my chosen profession. I secured the tickets, confirmed the attendance with multiple reminders, and even picked out the reservation at the Oak Room for the celebratory dinner. But reality hit, not with a confrontation, but with a clinical digital dismissal. An email from my mother, Victoria, time-stamped 4:30 a.m., confirming my worst fears. "Ava, darling, so sorry for the late notice. Your father has an emergency meeting regarding the firm's critical merger this morning with a major West Coast group. And I simply must be here to supervise the caterers for the arts gala tonight. You know how absolutely unreliable the staff is. Such a shame. We're so proud, dear. Send pictures." A multi-million-dollar merger negotiation and the quality control of canapés trumped the single greatest academic achievement of my life. The choice wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, a final, cold statement of where I ranked in the Sterling priorities. My achievement was reduced to an aesthetic inconvenience, a photo opportunity they could attend to later. I stood on that monumental stage, delivering my speech flawlessly, my voice ringing with confidence and an edge of controlled fury. My gaze repeatedly drifted to the two empty velvet-cushioned seats in the front row. They weren't just missing my graduation. They were rejecting my entire trajectory, dismissing my chosen world. The standing ovation that followed felt hollow, a sound swallowed by the cavernous wound of their absence. That night, sitting alone in a sterile hotel room, the cold anger set in. I swore an oath to myself. I would not beg for their love or attention. I would build a life so undeniably powerful, so spectacularly visible, that they would be forced to not only look up to me, but to beg to be let back into my orbit. They chose a merger. I would become the master of the most profitable architectural and real estate mergers in the city. The architect of vengeance. Ascension Designs. I didn't waste a single moment. I tore up the generous graduation check they mailed me, a symbolic act of defiance against their pathetic attempt to buy affection. Using my small savings, a student loan I refused to pay off until I had achieved hyper-success, and a loan leveraged against my MIT accolades, I launched Ascension Designs. I moved to New York, not into a comfortable apartment, but into a cramped, windowless studio in the financial district, sleeping on a cot beside my drafting table. The hunger for validation became my corporate strategy. My company wasn't built on connections. It was built on pure, unadulterated engineering brilliance and spite. I focused initially on structural solutions for failing luxury properties. Jobs the big, complacent firms found too risky, too complex, or too messy. My first major project was stabilizing a boutique hotel that had been condemned due to severe foundation issues caused by tunneling nearby. I didn't just fix it. I redesigned the entire load-bearing structure using innovative, lightweight carbon composite materials, creating an extra 2 floors of rentable space and a rooftop garden. My solution saved the developers $15 million and was the subject of a glowing feature in the Engineering Journal, where I was hailed as the structural surgeon of Manhattan. The notoriety exploded. Suddenly, Ava Sterling wasn't Richard Sterling's neglected daughter. She was a structural genius who could turn instability into profit. Ascension Designs rocketed to the forefront of sustainable, high-net-worth real estate development. My signature style was uncompromising. Clear lines, maximum light, and structures that felt as powerful as they were elegant. Built to last, unlike the crumbling emotional structure of my childhood home. I was building monoliths of control and success, one steel beam at a time. The culmination of this manic-driven success was my masterpiece. The entire top floor, the penthouse shell, of the newly constructed Metropolitan 1 Tower. This was not a passive acquisition. I became the lead architectural consultant on the final phases of the tower's construction, ensuring the top residential unit was designed as a bespoke, personal sanctuary. It was the highest piece of residential real estate in the Western Hemisphere, a glittering spire that looked down on the entire city, and directly down onto the older, stodgy buildings that housed Sterling and Associates. It was the physical manifestation of my rise. I spent a year meticulously designing the space. A $12 million fortress of glass, steel, and Italian marble. I installed a 360-degree, floor-to-ceiling glass facade and a massive, cantilevered infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the skyline, a structure that defied the very gravitational limits my father once claimed defined me. This wasn't a home. It was a pedestal. And I ensured the media coverage of the final price tag, $12 million, was sensational and inescapable. The inevitable collision. The begging call. 7 years passed without a word, a single moment of genuine remorse, until the tectonic plates of their world shifted. My father's firm, Sterling and Associates, failed to adapt. Their reliance on obsolete legal practices and old money connections, combined with a disastrous, prolonged legal battle over intellectual property, a field Richard Sterling had always dismissed, had driven them to the brink of insolvency. They had lost the merger that my parents had prioritized over my graduation, and their main institutional investor was pulling out. Then came the call. Not from my mother but from Julian. His voice, once dripping with easy arrogance, was now thin, reedy, and desperately humble. "Ava," he began, skipping the painful pleasantries. "It's the firm. Dad is bleeding money badly. We need a massive capital injection. And more importantly, we need a major architectural anchor. No serious financial institution will touch us unless we secure a future-facing contract with a firm that has credibility. And everyone knows there's only one name in high-profile, modern development." I paused, savoring the silence, adjusting my custom-designed leather gloves, a detail they wouldn't notice, but which symbolized my self-made luxury. "And what name would that be, Julian? Perhaps some old friend of mother's from the club." "Ascension Designs," he whispered, the name of my company tasting like defeat on his tongue. "Ooh. Your success is the only thing that can save us. Dad is frantic. We need your influence to secure the Liberty Yards redevelopment project. It's our last chance." The Liberty Yards project. A massive, multi-billion-dollar waterfront development. It was the most coveted contract in the city, demanding innovative structural and sustainable designs, and Sterling and Associates, with its dying reputation, had zero chance without me. "So let me clarify," I said, my voice dangerously smooth, chilling the very air in my expansive office. "The sister whose life achievement was valued less than buffet chafing dishes is now the solitary lifeline for the entire Sterling legacy. The architecture you dismissed is now your salvation. And the MIT education you ignored is now the only intellect capable of saving your balance sheet." "Yes, Ava," he admitted, the sound of his pride shattering clearly audible. We were wrong. Terribly wrong. We are begging you. Begging, I repeated, letting the power of the word settle. Tell mother and father I'll consider their fate. But I will only discuss this on my turf. Tell them to prepare for dinner at my residence next Tuesday. No caterers. No external counsel. Just the family. And tell them to dress appropriately for the altitude. They need to see how high I've had to climb to look down on the world they built. The dinner of unmasking and acquisition. The night they arrived at the Metropolitan 1 Tower was a performance I had rehearsed for a decade. I had the private elevator programmed to open directly onto the penthouse floor, ensuring the architectural shockwave was immediate and overwhelming. They stepped out frozen in place. My mother, Victoria, in a perfectly tailored but slightly frayed Chanel suit, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, not in admiration of the view, but in sheer psychological terror of my power. My father, Richard, looked physically smaller. His customary air of boardroom invincibility evaporated. Julian shuffled awkwardly behind them, his lawyerly polish gone. "My God, Ava," my mother whispered, her voice barely registering above the ambient hum of the city. "This is... You live here." The reports were true. I walked toward them, tall and uncompromising, my figure silhouetted against the blinding city lights. "Yes, mother. This is the $12 million penthouse, a home I built with the grit and genius you neglected. I designed every single piece of the structure, from the automated lighting that adapts to the mood of the city, to the seismic dampeners that make this tower unshakable. It is the solid, thriving foundation you never gave me." I led them to the dining table, a monolithic slab of concrete and polished quartz I had commissioned, set against the sprawling cityscape that was now my backyard. As the private chef served the simple, elegant meal, my parents tried desperately to pivot, praising the minimalism and the unprecedented view. Richard finally broke. He pushed aside his silverware and looked at me, a man stripped of his pride, facing the ultimate consequence of his arrogance. "Ava, we are facing ruin. The firm is insolvent. We are here as supplicants. What do you require to save Sterling and Associates? We will sign anything." I looked at him, then at Julian, who kept his gaze fixed on the polished quartz, unable to meet my eyes. "I require more than capital, father. I require control and vindication." I handed him a meticulously drafted contract, heavy with the weight of my victory. "I will secure the Liberty Yards redevelopment contract for Ascension Designs. That guarantees your firm's immediate survival and provides the necessary infusion of legitimacy and cash. However, in return, Ascension Designs takes a controlling stake, 70%, of Sterling and Associates. You, father, will immediately resign as CEO. You will be appointed senior counsel to the board, a decorative title without operational power. Julian, you will work for me, serving as the liaison between the two firms, reporting directly to my chief operating officer." Richard physically recoiled. 70%. Retire. "Ava, you're gutting my life's work. You're taking everything. Your legacy was already gutted, father. It was gutted the day you chose a caterer over your daughter's future. I am merely acquiring the assets at a fire sale price and restructuring them for success, using the brilliance you once mocked. This is not a rescue. It is an acquisition of a failing firm by a superior, dynamic one. You will serve the architectural vision you once dismissed." My mother intervened, her voice pleading but finally sincere. "Richard, stop. Look at what she built. She is the only reason we are sitting in this magnificent apartment tonight, instead of facing bankruptcy. Sign the contract, please." Richard Sterling, the man who had terrified Associates for 40 years, took the pen. His hand trembled, but he signed. The transfer of power was complete. I had won the war, not by destroying them, but by forcing them to survive under my command. The silence in the penthouse, once an instrument of my loneliness, was now the thunder of my triumph. The cost of absolute control and the rise of Elena. The immediate aftermath was a professional surgical strike. I assigned Julian the most grueling, thankless legal work on the Liberty Yards project, deliberately overloading him. He was forced to work 18-hour days under the demanding scrutiny of my Ascension team, learning the true meaning of meritocracy. When he finally succeeded, delivering a perfect, airtight legal framework, he didn't boast. He thanked me. The shift from arrogant brother to capable subordinate was the sweetest victory. My mother, Victoria, tried to bridge the personal gap. She called not to discuss the firm, but to ask for interior design advice for her charity balls. She started mentioning my MIT graduation to her friends, inventing reasons why they had been unavoidably delayed by a national crisis a decade ago. I listened, allowing her these small, necessary lies, understanding that her shame was her cross to bear. The control was exhilarating, but the penthouse remained a beautiful, cold shell. I had achieved ultimate power, but the space still felt like a monument to my loneliness, not my life. That's where Dr. Elena Brooks came in. Elena wasn't an architect or a financier. She was the most formidable urban planning activist in the city. I first encountered her during the grueling zoning battles for the Liberty Yards redevelopment. She was a constant, eloquent thorn in my side, arguing passionately for community integration, public green spaces, and low-income housing mandates. She dismissed my entire portfolio as spectacular structures of social exclusion. Our meetings were intellectual sparring matches that quickly became the highlight of my week. She wasn't jealous of my $12 million. She was angry at what it represented, the privatization of the public sphere. "You built this tower, Ava," she once challenged me in the boardroom, her eyes flashing, "because you were abandoned on a stage. It is a monument to proving your worth. But the moment you start building for the city instead of for your past, you will find genuine joy." She saw through the marble and glass to the vulnerable, neglected girl inside. She forced me to negotiate not just for profit but for purpose. Eventually, I agreed to an unprecedented deal. Ascension Designs would dedicate 15% of the Liberty Yards units to affordable housing, and she would personally design a massive, ecologically innovative public park on the waterfront, directly adjacent to my most lucrative luxury tower. Our professional collaboration slowly melted into something deeper. Elena's warmth and dedication were the antithesis of the cold ambition that built my empire. She taught me that true power was the ability to share, not just to dominate. She became my partner, the only person I trusted enough to share the weight of my success and the silence of my home. The final act of healing and acceptance. Months later, as the Liberty Yards project broke ground, a project that saved the Sterling name and cemented the Ascension legacy, I hosted a private dinner in the penthouse. It was an intimate gathering. Richard, Victoria, Julian, Elena, and me. The tension was gone, replaced by a cautious, functional respect. My mother, Victoria, brought no fine wine or fancy dessert. Instead, she presented me with a small, heavy box. Inside was my Golden Pencil Award from MIT, which she had tracked down and retrieved from a dusty university archive, polished until it gleamed. "We missed the award," she said, her voice catching. "We missed the beginning. There is no excuse for what we did, Ava. We valued status over substance. I framed the newspaper clipping with your photo from that day. I want you to know I finally see you. Not the Sterling daughter, but the genius who built this entire world." My father, Richard, stood up, his gaze sweeping the penthouse. "I was a failure as a father and a fool as a businessman. Your success, Miss Sterling," he used my formal title, the highest sign of respect he could give, "has given me a second chance. And thank you, Elena, for reminding my daughter that even the strongest structures need a garden." Julian, my formerly arrogant brother, looked at Elena, then back at me. "I owe you everything, Ava. You were right about everything. This is the real power." I felt the tears finally come, not tears of bitterness but tears of release. The decade-long burden of resentment lifted. I had earned their respect, their contrition, and their gratitude. I walked to the edge of the glass, Elena by my side, her presence a silent, strong anchor. I looked down at the city I had conquered, at the lights of the Liberty Yards site, where my power was building a park designed by the woman I loved. Thank you, I said, turning back to face them. Your words are accepted. You are always welcome in my home. But know this. I didn't build this $12 million penthouse so you would beg to visit. I built it so I would never again need your approval to breathe. And now that I don't need it, I can finally truly forgive you and accept the family I deserve. The girl who was neglected was gone. In her place was Ava Sterling, the CEO, the partner, the conqueror, who had transformed resentment into a towering empire, and who had finally filled the emptiness with love and purpose. The revenge was complete. The healing had begun. The life I built wasn't just $12 million strong. It was unbreakable. And the view, shared with the people who finally mattered, was better than I ever dreamed.